Made in America Week. It kicks off officially today, focusing on all sorts of things that are built in the United States of America.
So this is a continuation of the focus by the president to celebrate, recognize, and grow jobs in America.
The Congressional Budget Office will not be releasing their revised score on the GOP health care bill as planned today.
Senate Republicans now delaying their fight to repeal and replace Obamacare as Senator John McCain is recovering from eye surgery.
The Senate Judiciary Committee says it wants Donald Trump Jr. to testify.
The fact of the matter is, this meeting was absolutely illegal. The media and all these liberals who are rushing to judgment are ignoring the Constitution.
American doctors now heading to Great Britain, hoping to give terminally ill infant Charlie Gard a chance at life.
The desperate search intensifying after a deadly flash flood swept away a family in Arizona. 9 bodies, including 6 children, recovered at this hour.
Taya Kyle praising the first double amputee soldier to re-enlist in the U.S. Army. Sergeant Dana Bowman at a rodeo in Wyoming, parachuting in with a huge American flag. Check that out.
ELO is so crowded. There's so many people. How do you break up? Does everyone have to break up with everybody? Aren't there like 100 people in ELO?
I don't know. What is it? That's the name of the group?
Electric Light Orchestra. They were huge.
They were very big.
You know, it's so
in the
many
days.
It's easy if Rush wants to break up. You just got 3 people, right? But how do you break up with everybody? If
You're obsessed with the number of people in bands.
Because I just worry about how the money's going to be divided.
Who
up.
are we interviewing, Rand Paul? And you asked, what group was it?
Yeah.
Another musical
Whatever.
group. How many are in it? And he got it right.
This is all he needs to know. We're a trio, and we're bringing you the news from the Kirby Couch today. Right now, let's dial in the White House Director of Legislative Affairs, Mark Short. Good morning to you, Mark.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you. Because John McCain had emergency surgery, it looks like it's going to be a while before the Senate actually is able to take up a vote. From where the White House is, do you understand that the Republicans have enough votes to pass it at this point?
Well, thanks for the question. First, let me say our thoughts and prayers are with Senator McCain. We certainly need him back here, not just for health care, but because the next legislation we'll be leading is the National Defense Authorization Act, which he'll be leading on the Senate floor. So we look forward to getting him back. But we need to hold together the Republicans who have campaigned and promised since 2010 to repeal and replace Obamacare. And we think we'll be able to do that. We know that there's a couple, and Susan Collins, who, she had voted against every repeal effort the last several years. So perhaps she's been more supportive of Obamacare, not really interested in the repeal. But we need to make sure that the other Republicans stay in place and that we pass repeal to end this nightmare for the American people.
I'll paraphrase what she said yesterday. Barack Obama made a major mistake not dealing with the Republican Party, getting a single vote to pass health care, and we saw what happened, and now Republicans are making the same mistake. He thinks that the Republicans should have been reaching out to Democrats all along. What's the reality that you know?
Well, thanks. That's a good question. I think that what we've heard from Democrats in many cases, they've quietly said, look, we know that the insurance plans are falling apart. We know the exchanges are collapsing. We know that premiums have gone up. We know that what we promised as far as the doctor-patient relationship is not there anymore, that government is in the middle. We agree with you that that Obamacare is collapsing, but it's a signature accomplishment of his administration. We can't be part of the repeal effort. I think it makes us ask, well, what are you trying to hold on to? Is it only the name of repeal? Is that the only name of Obamacare? Is that the only thing you're reluctant to repeal? But Democrats have said that they would want to be part of a fix later, but they can't be part of the repeal effort. So the bill was passed on a strictly partisan vote. I think it's going to need to be repealed on a partisan vote, and then we can hopefully replace this moving forward.
Well, so you're saying repeal? So you're saying what Rand Paul says? And the president tweeted, if you can't pass it, just vote on repeal.
We think that the better plan is to repeal and replace this moving forward right now in the Senate. We think that that is better policy than will be formed later. Having said that, we also think that for Senator Paul, we would love to have his support in this bill. We'd ask for the members of Kentucky to reach out to Senator Paul and ask, how can you side with 48 Democrats in protecting the law that is as it is in protecting Obamacare, because we need all Republican support in order to repeal this law.
Well,
Mark, he says his fix is to allow everyone in the individual market to join a group plan. That's the only way you're going to get him on board. Will that happen?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that Rand Paul advocates that we wish there were votes for, but they're not. And so the question voters are going to have to face is, do you want to get rid of the individual mandate? Do you want to get rid of many of the tax burdens that Americans are facing? Do you want to have a plan that will actually reduce premiums? What was promised before is a plan with Obamacare that was estimated to reduce premiums by $2,500 per plan, and instead it's increased premiums by over $3,000 per plan. So the choices we have for the American people is repeal and replace right now to begin providing financial security for many families that are struggling under Obamacare, that can help to return the relationship between a doctor and a patient, and make it more affordable and provide better care. That's the choice that we have to face right now. And so there's a lot of proposals that Rand Paul recommends that we like, but simply they're not the votes for right now.
Sure, but Mark, the bill that the Senate is going to be putting forward, there are a lot of Republicans who say it's just not a very good bill. It still has a lot of those taxes in there. It's got the regulations in there. It's got that insurance corporation subsidy thing in there. The Republicans ran on repealing it, and that bill does not do that.
Well, it does. Let's hold on for a second, because it does repeal the individual mandate. It does begin to lower costs over several years for people who are getting crushed by the burden that they're facing.
My larger point, it doesn't get rid of the whole ball of wax. It takes out it takes out big parts of it, but it still leaves a lot of it intact.
No, it does. It does more than that. It also protects life. That is something that we campaigned on, and it ensures that taxpayers are no longer paying for taxpayer-funded abortion. So there are many pieces in this bill that conservatives and Republicans should be behind and supporting, and we think that we'll get their support as we're able to continue to advocate and explain what is actually in the bill, Steve.
Mark, the CBO is delaying the release of the score on this new health care bill. How reliable is the CBO score? Because some of them are saying they're not going to vote on it, yes or no, until they see the score. But then we saw what happened with Obamacare. They said this thing's going to work, and it's not. And we heard over the weekend you were saying it was fake news, the CBO report.
Yeah, Anzi, thank you for the question. When CBO was created in 1974, it was created to help forecast what is the budgetary impact on legislation. It was not created to try to forecast what would happen to insurers with a government takeover insurance during the Obama years. So this is outside of its scope, and they were drastically off. They forecast today that 25 million Americans would be on the Obamacare exchanges, when in fact they're only 10 million. So they were 60% off where they were when they began several years ago in forecasting this. What they've said now is that 20-some million people will lose insurance. But if you dissect those numbers, what you find is they're forecasting not off of current numbers of insurers, but off an old baseline from several years ago that forecast there would be 18 million now, when in fact there's 10. So there's roughly 8 million phantom people that they say will lose insurance. There's another 4 million people they say will leave Medicaid because there's no longer a mandate requiring them to have insurance. 4 million people on Medicaid, when it's a free program for the vast majority of people, makes no sense why they would leave. And then there's another 7 million they say will choose to leave the insurance exchanges because they're no longer required to by law. That's not losing insurance. That's choosing to get off of something the government's forcing you to have. So that's 18 million right there as far as their numbers that the media will say are losing insurance. So we really think that the CBO estimates should stick to their budgetary numbers and not trying to forecast the number of people on insurance.
And some Republicans should be willing to say what you just said rather than just run for the hills because they think the numbers look bad. They just don't seem to have that courage unless they don't believe it. I got to bring you to this last element, and that is the nominees. For the longest time, the Trump administration has been taking on the chin, saying they've been slow to nominate people. Now, Mark, tell everybody what the real deal is. You have about 48 nominees confirmed. How many are up, and what are Democrats doing?
Brian, thank you for the question. We've had 50 nominees confirmed. At this point in the Obama administration, there was over 200. So we've had roughly a quarter of the nominees confirmed. Of those 50, 30 have required what's called a cloture vote, which requires 30 hours of debate to be used. Of Obama's 200, Republicans only forced 3 cloture votes. So what that means is it just is a way of delaying and obstructing the agenda of the Trump administration. I'll give you a perfect example. Last week, Judge Nye was confirmed 100-0 in the Senate, but Democrats forced a cloture vote requiring us to burn 30 hours of debate on a nominee who is supported unanimously.
Wow.
That is the stalling and delaying tactics that Democrats have been pursuing to try to stop the Trump
and
agenda.
Taxpayers are paying them, right? So it's wasting our money.
Ainsley, not just our taxpayers paying them, but it's with the American people elected new administration to come to this town and to change it and to disrupt it. And what they're doing is a pure obstruction to prevent the will of the American people from putting political appointees in the federal departments.
How many are up for votes right now waiting for confirmation?
We have sent right now at this point over 130 nominees are sitting before the United States Senate, either for committee hearings or for floor votes at this time.
And 130,
today, in fact, will be the Deputy Secretary for Pentagon. Here we are 7 months into the administration fighting wars on multiple fronts, and the Democrats haven't allowed us to confirm a Deputy Secretary for the Department of Defense.
That's shameful.
You guys got to take your own parliamentary procedures and knock it down to 8 hours and push it forward. I mean, you're in the majority. It's unbelievable.
All right. Mark Short, the White House Director of Legislative Affairs. Mark, thank you very much. A busy day there at the White House.
I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You bet.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I don't think the folks at home really understand the importance of that.
Because they want to blame President Trump, and Senator Schumer says it, and then he goes to lunch, and that's it.
You said last week that was un-American. It really is. When, when we're asking our men and women to fight for our country, and they're not even
It's an issue of national security when it comes to the Pentagon. All right, it is 7-11 now here in New York City, and here's Jolie.
7-11. 7-11. Good morning, guys. Let's get you caught up on what you need to know before you head out the door, starting with a Fox News alert. The desperate search intensifying this morning for a missing man after a deadly flash flood swept away a family in Arizona. 9 bodies, including 6 children, recovered at this hour. The youngest just 2 years old. Authorities say 14 people were at a swimming hole when 6-feet-high waters from heavy rainfall rushed down out of nowhere. 4 people were rescued and are expected to be okay. Officials now investigating after someone broke into a Republican senator's office and left a threatening note. Nevada Senator Dean Heller has recently been in the national spotlight, considered a possible swing vote on health care. Heller reportedly on the fence about the GOP's replacement plan. Las Vegas police are not giving details about what the note said. Iran sentencing an American to 10 years in prison on accusations of spying. The government there says 37-year-old Chinese American Ziyu Wang gathered information to pass to the U.S. State Department. The Princeton graduate student was arrested last summer while doing research for his PhD dissertation. The State Department is calling for the immediate release of all citizens held unjustly in Iran. And President Trump is congratulating the Navy on its newest ship. The president tweeting, quote, "The USS John Finn will provide essential capabilities to keep America safe. Our sailors are the best out of anywhere in the world. Congratulations." Now, the ship, named after a San Diego World War II veteran, was commissioned Saturday at Pearl Harbor, and there were thousands. I read about 2,000 people there at that event.
That is beautiful. Look at that image, the American flag.
See that?
I'll tell you what, I was at Pearl Harbor almost a year ago today. It's amazing the crowd to get every single day that show up just to take those tours and go through everything.
I would love to do that.
By the way, Jillian, congratulations for you. You take the stairs every time. You never just could use the quad exercise and take the big stage. You walk around right up the
step. I know, I walk around and up. I make life harder for myself.
Someday we'll televise. Look at the discipline.
I'm going to fall one of these days.
No, you won't.
I'm just telling you.
He's closest. He'll catch you.
It will happen, and you're allowed to laugh when it happens.
No.
All right, still ahead on this Monday, Democrats are ramping up their calls to impeach President Trump.
Impeachment is something that really has an impact on the country. The law is certainly clear.
Virginia Congressman David Brat is fired up about this one and says Democrats don't have any proof. He joins us live on that next.
And a nightmare for hundreds of brides across the country. A wedding dress store shuts down out of nowhere, leaving brides at the altar. This morning, the company is finally breaking its silence.
At least somebody's breaking their silence.
Something that really has an impact on the country. The law is certainly clear.
Yeah, what does that mean? Does the Democrats and the mainstream media ramping up their calls for impeachment of President Trump, believe it or not? And our next guest is outraged. He's Virginia GOP Congressman David Brat. Congressman, do you think they're out of bounds here?
Yeah, no, I mean, whenever Nancy Pelosi starts talking about ethics, I mean, you know you ought to run for the hills. Something's cooking, right? So there's no statute that's been violated. Alan Dershowitz has come on. Mark Warner over the weekend on the Sunday show. Before he saw smoke, smoke, smoke everywhere he went. Now he says he sees fire, right? But they cannot name the fire. They cannot name the statute. And they rely on this conflating two issues. One is the Russians are involved in our elections. Everybody knows that, right? But the second is they've been saying, let's get rid of and impeach President Trump since day one, right after he won. They want to get rid of him. So now the new piece that I don't think people have focused on enough is the national mainstream media. They're no longer doing news at all. Their talking heads are doing opinion pieces 24/7. And I mean 24/7, right? I mean, they're saying you're guilty, you're this, and none of it is news, right? So if your kid sticks his hand in the cookie jar, you're guilty. But if the kid's looking at the cookie jar, and if Hillary Clinton brought $2 billion worth of cookies in the White House, and then Obama let this Russian woman in to sell the cookies, and she's been on the Hill lobbying forever, right, with this Magnitsky Act. That's been on the Hill forever. So she gets a meeting with the White House. The Clintons have met with this person forever, and this is the huge news, right? No statute broken.
It's not. They tried it with the Electoral College, and they tried to do a re-election, revote. It didn't happen. Now it's Russia. Lastly, Obamacare.
Right.
When you see Senator Susan Collins come out and say, we should have been dealing with Democrats, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, it's rather incredible, right? I mean, we promised, right? Promise is kind of in the top 10, you know, Moses down on the mountain and everything. Don't bear false witness. You had 7 years to get ready. And now, like on the last segment, Mark Short's a friend of mine. He says Rand's voting with Democrats. No, I don't think so. Our bill does not get rid of Obamacare. The regulations are Obamacare. The mandate, that's neat. There's some other small ball stuff. But the regulations are the guts of Obamacare. And if you don't get rid of the regs, everybody at home, your prices are going to go up for 20 to 30% every year until you can no longer afford health care at all. All my small businesses, my district, are having a hard time hiring people because they cannot afford health care.
Right.
And so when Senator Collins says that kind of remark, they had 7 years to weigh through the complexity of Medicaid, et cetera.
Right.
So she had plenty of time to do that. So go do it. But
she's
right now
liking
it's
the
voting
other
time.
networks, giving her prime time, and she's liking the bow she's getting from Democrats in her district. And I think it's colored what she said in the past. David Brat, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, Brian.
Straight ahead, our next guest says fake news is a far bigger threat to Western civilization than the Kremlin. He is Dennis Prager. He's next.
Time for your news by the numbers. First, nearly 150,000. That's how many attempts were made to hack South Carolina's voter registration system on Election Day. Sorry, Mom and Dad. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, which also reports none was successful. Next, 80%. That's how much pork belly prices have gone up this year. The bacon craze being blamed for the record high increase.
Delicious.
And finally, $56.5 million. That's how much money War for the Planet of the Apes took in to rule the box office over the weekend.
Apes fight only to survive.
Surprised by this, the apes squashing Spider-Man Homecoming by over $11 million. I thought they would kind of be neck and neck.
What about that Will Ferrell, Amy Poehler movie? How did that do?
I didn't know they had one, but I love both of them.
Right.
They're really funny.
Meanwhile, what's a bigger threat to America, fake news or Russia? Radio talk show host Dennis Prager recently tweeting this. The news media in the West pose a far greater danger to Western civilization than Russia does.
All right, joining us right now to discuss is the host of the Dennis Prager Show, Dennis Prager. Dennis, threat? Really?
You know, I have to tell you, and this may sound odd to, I don't know if to you, but to many of the viewers, I don't understand why the tweet is controversial. Putin does not threaten Western civilization. Western civilization is a set of ideas and values. When students remove the American flag from their campuses, that's not Putin. All of the things that are happening in the West to undo Western civilization have nothing to do with Putin. The universities, the only thing I regret about the tweet is that I didn't write the universities and the media in the West are a greater threat to Western civilization. The New York Times publishes pieces that it is unfortunate that the United States was ever founded. We should have been part of Canada from the beginning. I mean, I don't know why it's controversial. That's what they're teaching. Half of America's millennials think socialism is preferable to capitalism. That's a result of the media and the universities.
So do you agree with the president when he tweeted out, with all of its phony, unnamed sources and highly slanted and even fraudulent reporting, hashtag fake news is distorting democracy in our country?
The media have gone from news media to opinion media in the guise of news. That is extremely dangerous. So essentially, he is right.
So who do you blame for this?
He doesn't tweet. Who do I blame for it? The left has taken over the universities and the media in the West. Remember, I wrote the West. It's true for the BBC. It is true for the major media in Germany. Read the book, The Strange Death of Europe, written by a guy who is an atheist and a gay major thinker, Douglas Murray. And he writes about how the media hide from the people of Europe. He's European. He's a Brit. The media completely hid from the people the devastating effects of massive immigration of Muslims into Europe. So, again, it's not controversial unless you just don't know what's happening.
So you got France, Germany, you got Belgium, and you have even Sweden. I saw some horrendous footage, and we know what's happened with the series of attacks over in London. That's all because the government's been irresponsible to their own people. But in the big picture, Dennis, I'm wondering if the president knows the media is against him, he has to play the perfect game. Do you think they should just deal with the situation at hand and try to play the perfect game with communications and try to overcome this and not give them things like a discovery of a meeting that would just fuel this fire?
Well, there's no fire to fuel. I really do believe it remains a witch hunt. So my objection to the president is the non-erudite nature of his tweets. If I were the tweet minister in the cabinet, I would write very different things in a much more sophisticated way. I fully acknowledge that.
Sure. And I'm sure some would be listening to Dennis Prager today on the radio. You're teaming up with Adam Carolla. And a moment ago you mentioned you wish you would have mentioned the universities. You and Adam take a look at safe spaces and talk a little bit about how colleges have taken some very bad ideas and ruined them.
Well, they've taken good ideas and ruined them. We're making a movie called No Safe Spaces. People could see a trailer, nosafespaces.com. And it's publicly funded because Hollywood obviously wouldn't fund this. Listen, the University of Pennsylvania, just let me give you, there's so many examples, but for whatever reason, this is my favorite. The University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League college, has a Department of English. For I don't know how long, a major, beautiful mural of William Shakespeare was up at the English department.
Okay.
For logical reasons, he's the greatest writer of English in history.
Sure.
They took it down because he was a white male.
All right, here's a look at the trailer.
We judge people based on racial origin and history of oppression.
We call it the progressive stack.
I'm Black. I'm Hispanic. I'm Asian. I'm a student at Utopia University.
You think that bad ideas now hatching on campus have the potential to infect or influence the entire country, right?
Absolutely. As I said, do you know students at campus after campus are voting to remove the American flag? Because, why? Because they believe it is a symbol of oppression. The world has understood the American flag as a symbol of liberty. When the American flag shows up in your country, overwhelmingly people thank God for it. And now it's regarded as a symbol of oppression, thanks to what the left is doing at the university.
Dennis, where can we see your movie?
Well, it'll be out next year. It's being made. We're still making it. So
Okay.
Hopefully every theater.
Dennis,
but in the meantime, I would ask people to go to No Safe Spaces and PragerUniversity.com.
Dennis Prager, thank you.
Thank you.
Luckily, campuses are giving them plenty of material. Lots to report on.
That's true.
All right, still ahead on this Monday, the Trump administration cleaning house at the VA again. More top officials just got fired. How many and where? Details coming up.
Plus, Congressman Sean Duffy and his wife, Rachel Campos Duffy, are here live in the studio. Brian was wondering if you shared the same car today. Did you?
No, I walked over first.
Live from Studio F in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, Fox and Friends. And look who's here on the curvy couch with us. The Republican Congressman from Wisconsin, Sean Duffy, and Fox News contributor, Rachel Campos Duffy. Good morning to both of you.
This is the first time on the couch. This is a
What do you
great
think?
view up here. This is awesome.
It's awesome. Rachel, you like it? Yep.
And the studio has a kitchen, and later on they're going to be cooking with friends. With your, how many children do you have?
We only brought 6 of the 8 kids. So we thought 8 might just
How
overwhelm
what's
you
the
guys.
oldest and what's the youngest?
17 to 1.
Okay.
Do they wear
Quite a
name
ratio.
tags?
We just count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys.
We just say, hey, you.
So we're walking around town last night, and we only had 6. And we go, God, we're missing a couple. This feels like we're so small.
Actually, it was like such an easy dinner out. Like, we were like, this is super easy.
Only 6 kids.
Only 6 kids.
Do you drive a van?
I can't
A school
tell you.
bus?
It's too much.
A Suburban. Yeah. They don't all fit, though, do
They don't fit.
No,
We have to take
but
2
we have a
cars and all
driver
go.
now, so.
You got a roof rack.
Oh, we have one of our kids. There's a driver.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, got it.
I was like, whoa, we don't have a driver.
I meant my daughter drives, which
Right.
means we can be in separate cars.
A designated driver.
So, Congressman, let's talk about what's happening at Capitol Hill. Not happening this week. There's not going to be a vote on the Senate bill because of the health of John McCain. And that delay, some people theorize, will help the Senate try to wrestle the votes necessary, or do you think it'll hurt?
No, I think it helps. I mean, if you saw from our own experience in the House, the longer it took to get health care done, the more pressure that was building on members of Congress who were a no. And it brings people together to find compromise because, again, we've promised health care repeal and replace for 7, 8 years, and our people expect us to get it done. And so as members of Congress go home, it's remarkable. People who have supported you for years, and you're a wonderful representative, and you're great, and you're a fighter, they come back at you hard to go, listen, I haven't supported you, voted for you, raised money for you to go there and not get health care repealed and replaced done. You promised me, make it happen.
Rachel,
and that's a good thing.
Rachel, if it doesn't happen, what does this mean for, I mean, you're a mom, you're trying to feed all of these children, you're worried about their futures, you're worried about health care. What does it mean for our country if this doesn't get passed or repealed and replaced?
Well, it's a huge deal for our communities. And we live in the Midwest, we live in Wisconsin. If you don't get health care passed, so you have all the issues surrounding health care, the things you guys discussed earlier. But if you don't get health care passed, you can't move on to tax reform, which so many of our small businesses are depending on. But that said, I love the segment you guys had earlier with the pollster who said that no one's talking about Russia in the Midwest. Right. It's absolutely true. We live in these places. Russia comes up because they're mad that Russia is the topic, or they're mad that Hillary isn't getting Russia topics as well as Trump. People are talking about manufacturing's up, logging's up, mining's up. 42 bills have been signed that have been lessening regulations. They're happy about what he did with the Paris Accord. So the base is happy with Trump. They're worried about Congress.
Sure. And Congressman, apparently, according to the White House communications people, the reason they're doing Made in America Week this week is to tee up tax reform. And, while it is uncertain at this point whether or not health care goes through, tax reform is something the president is very animated about, and so are the American people.
Right, but tax reform will not happen unless we get health care reform done. This is something that we have to drive into the American people's minds because we're using budget reconciliation, these stupid Senate rules. And in tax reform, it has to be revenue neutral. So every tax dial you move down, another tax dial has to go up. We take $1 trillion of Obamacare taxes to move those tax dials down by $1 trillion.
Yeah, but they still leave some of the taxes in.
No, you're right. So we don't get to go quite to $1 trillion. And then we had the border adjustment tax, which that's up in the air right now, but that was another $1 trillion. But we're trying to figure out how to do tax reform
and
using
be neutral.
Budget reconciliation. But you use being revenue neutral. And I mean, the way you solve this is get rid of the filibuster rule.
Thank you.
You only need 51 votes.
Boom.
Get rid of it, and we can do wholesale
Are you
tax
willing
reform.
to do that if Democrats are in the majority?
Because
you're going to feel powerless.
Because Democrats are going to do it anyway when they have the majority. They're going to get rid of it when they have the majority. We might as well do it now and accomplish this agenda. We've won 1,000 seats since Obamacare,
right.
And the American people want us to accomplish this agenda, and we're not getting it done because of stupid Senate rules.
Well, then, if you're going to go nuclear option, just repeal it. Just kill the whole thing.
Oh,
whole shebang.
We're talking on health care?
Yeah.
Oh, health care, and then we get wholesale tax reform, and then you see explosive economic growth. Families are helped, more jobs, more opportunity, better wages, and the Trump agenda is on fire.
Medicaid, you know what it's like. You talk to a lot of people that are barely getting by, and a lot of them live on Medicaid. And now the states that made it work without Medicaid, those Medicaid dollars, is Wisconsin, right?
That's
You
right.
guys did it without it. Florida without it. And now Ohio gets it, and they're saying, how dare you take it away? What's your reaction to that?
Well, so there's an inequity there, right? But you know what? We have to, as lawmakers, consider the Wisconsin model and all the good things we did without taking the extra money and fixing Medicaid ourselves. But also, we have to consider Ohio. And how do we have an equitable solution that takes in Ohio and Wisconsin and Florida and Texas? And it becomes a little bit challenging because you're treating one state differently than another. But our realities are different.
All right, Sean, Rachel, thank y'all so much for being with us. We're going to have you at the end of the show.
We're gonna make
making what?
pancakes.
Pancakes.
Perfect.
Delicious.
It's Italian
Lumberjacks.
Never been done before.
It's going to be unbelievable. And wait till you see how we tie in Wisconsin to pancakes, too.
Oh, we can't wait to see. But something that hasn't been done, we haven't met all the children yet. Well, we're only going to meet 6 of the 8,
Most of them.
but most of them.
All right. So an hour from now with that. In the meantime, we got some headlines right over there, and Jillian's got them.
What if you can't wait an hour for the pancakes? It's a big problem, right? Good morning to you at home. Let's start with this right now. President Trump once again cleaning house at the VA. Secretary of Veterans Affairs David Shulkin taking immediate action, removing 2 top officials amid dangerous care allegations. The Manchester VA Hospital's Medical Center Director Danielle Alker and Chief of Staff James Schlosser both replaced, pending a top-to-bottom review. Now, this move comes just hours after the Boston Sunday Globe published a report alleging horrifying conditions that includes a bug-infested operating room. Well, the Jews could soon be let loose. O.J. Simpson's former lawyer, Yael Galanter, says he thinks his old client will likely be paroled at his hearing Thursday. The 70-year-old has spent 9 years in a Nevada prison for armed robbery and kidnapping. Galanter says parole in the state is based on how you behave in prison and that O.J. has been a model inmate. Now, if paroled, he could be out as early as October. And a major wedding dress chain breaks its silence days after abruptly closing its doors. Alfred Angelo Bridal is apologizing for the, quote, inconvenience and hardship after filing bankruptcy. But the company isn't saying what will happen to the thousands of brides-to-be waiting for their dresses or even a refund at this point. It's closing all 60 of its own stores and pulling wedding dresses out of nearly 1,500 stores that carry their dresses. And I know this has been a big story for days, guys. So many women across the country are just, what's going to happen?
Yeah, they're not left at the altar. They're left at the dress store.
Yes, or to find another dress store.
Wow.
Yep.
Which they've already paid for.
Yep.
All right, Jillian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia.
All right, meanwhile, next on our rundown, is the Star-Spangled Banner pompous and should it be removed from sporting events? One columnist thinks so. Wait till you hear what she's saying.
And remember this campaign pledge from President Trump?
Simple rules when it comes to rebuilding this country. Buy American and hire American.
Well, today, the president is following through on that promise, kicking off his Made in America campaign at the White House. Stuart Varney is here to react. He's coming up next live from Studio F. Good morning.